All right, thank you, Bob, for taking time out of your busy day to sit down with us. And actually, as you'll see later in the video, we'll go out and about and see some different sites of Deerfield that maybe the residents haven't seen before. So I wanted to give the residents the idea of what it is that you do on a daily basis. You know, your departments, the areas you manage around Deerfield, and some of the safety protocols that are in place for team members and residents. So just a little bit more intimate view of what you get to do every single day. So my first question is, what departments fall under your role as the Director of Community Services?
No, that's a great question. So here at Deerfield, I'm overseeing the maintenance, housekeeping, laundry, transportation, security. I oversee any of the construction projects, the refurbishment of apartments and townhomes for new residents. I also chair the Deerfield Safety Committee, which is made up of many other team members. And it is truly helping solve problems within our community. It's trying to find ways that my departments can provide a better service to the residents. And that keeps us all pretty busy right there.
Yeah, and you guys are certainly busy all the time, and you know, there's always a lot of things to do. So what have you talked about you overseeing the housekeeping? What have they done in particular? I know we've done a lot of different things to help us try and keep us safe from COVID-19, but what are some of the other steps that the housekeeping department has done to really step up to help prevent the spread of COVID-19?
No, and you know, as you well know, it's taken all the team members at Deerfield to kind of focus on this one. But within housekeeping, they're doing disinfecting of high-touch places, the railings, the elevators, the buttons, places where we know that people, when they walk, are touching. So they're really detailed about making sure that those areas get cleaned. Even in transportation, when we transport a resident to an appointment, when we're done, we wipe down the seats, the doors, all the places that they could have touched, the seatbelt buckles, the buttons, etc. And it's truly been, over the course since we started this, you know, we've had residents, you know, that were self-isolating. And obviously when a resident is self-isolating, it takes all of us to make sure that we can provide somewhat of a service while they're in their apartment. And from a housekeeping standpoint, we need to see who needs their trash picked up, when they need their mail. If they have an issue inside the apartment, we have different PPE that we can put on to go in, because we can't wait till the end of the self-isolation or the quarantine to go in and fix something or whatever it may be. So through COVID, you know, hats off to the housekeepers for what they've done, you know, not only with the residents, but with the team members, you know, the break rooms and the drinking fountains and the doors going into the team member bathrooms or public bathrooms. And it's just been their due diligence to ensure that we're keeping things clean and disinfected.
Yeah, they've certainly done a tremendous job, and commend them for all their extra hard work for what they're doing. And I know it's important for them and it's important for everyone. One of the other things that you mentioned earlier is you oversee security. Now, we have a transportation and security lead, Jordan, who helps and has really done a fantastic job so far in his new role. But we also contract with a company, Permar. Could you maybe kind of explain to residents as to what their role is and how they help Deerfield?
No, and that's a great question, because we rely on Permar so much after hours and on weekends to ensure the safety of the residents. We expect them to provide a concierge service to a point. There are things that Permar can do and Permar can't do. An example would be if a fire alarm battery needed to be replaced. In the past, we've had a couple of the guards that were willing to do it, but in the end, Permar doesn't want the guards up on ladders because of the liability. But if it's a pull cord station, they can go in and replace those batteries. They report to if a resident presses their pendant. They respond to those. If it's an incident, they assist with calling 911. They write up the incident reports. They deliver packages. They deliver meals. And we've been lucky. We've had, Jordan worked for Permar for many years and was here and knows every resident. And it just takes all of them to provide the security. One of the things a lot of residents don't know is they're required to go out and walk the entire building, every floor, every garage, and we have specifically put what we call little buttons in hidden places, and then Permar walks around with a wand, and they have to pass that wand in front of the button, and then it's loaded into a database so that I can see how often they made the rounds, how frequently, etc. And that's very helpful because they don't have the supervision after hours and weekends, and it's just a reassurance to know that we know that they're walking the garages in the entire building. And truly there's just so much we ask them to do, and once in a while we run into the case where I have to call their home office and say, hey, can we get the guards to do this? And Permar, the people I work with, are always looking for ways to have their guards help us more. But when it gets into mechanical work or cleaning, that type of thing, it's a hard no.
Yeah, and that's really good information. We've also, I know, in the past, or since COVID-19, one of our other safety protocols was having the guard car out in the entrance. Now, obviously, now it's colder. The temperatures are a little bit harder to read. Is there anything else that you want to let the residents know about that change?
Sure. So, as all of the residents know, Monday of this week is when we stopped having the car out front, and that was for very specific reasons. We saw it back in March and April, and more so now when the visitor or vendor, whoever resident was coming back and they'd roll down the window. You all know that we used a temperature gun that takes the surface temperature of the skin, and that's what we were using it for. But in this colder weather, as soon as the window goes down, the gun would just read an error because it's unable to. And we saw this, like I said, back in March and April. And if everyone remembers, this is when we went to a thermometer that we stuck in everyone's mouth, even though it had a clean sleeve over it. There were a lot of issues with people not feeling comfortable with that type of temperature. And so when we look at what we were doing out front, it's tough to get an accurate temperature in this type of weather. And so what we're doing now is, as you know, because you're in charge of the team member sign-ins, every one of us get our temperature taken twice a day when we come to work, when we go home. If visitors are coming, they get checked by the front desk. As soon as they come in, they get their temperature, and we get them logged in. And so right now, that is what is working, and we're still getting the temperatures, an accurate temperature versus an error on the temperature guns.
Yeah, no, that's all great information. And one of the other things that you mentioned about Permar and what they do is the pull cords. And obviously, we talk about how safety and how important safety is. So how do the pull cords in each of the rooms work?
Well, let's go up there and take a look.
All right. Well, thanks, Bob. Yes, as you had mentioned earlier, you said that, well, let's just go take a look. So here we are. We're going to take a look. So again, when the pull cord is engaged or pulled, so who receives that call, and what are their expectations as far as maybe reaction times and things like that?
Excellent question. So it was 2 years ago in December that we installed this system throughout the entire campus. By every bed, every bathroom, parking garages, common areas, and so forth. And what this is a system that's going to get you help quickly. And as I'm showing here, I have the cord hanging towards the bedside, because think of it as in the middle of the night you wake up and you feel like you're having a medical emergency, or you just need some help from Deerfield. All you got to do is pull the cord. The cord is going to activate. It sends a signal to a pager that security wears, or the maintenance guys, depending on who's ever covering it. And then they'll get a signal that says your apartment number and your name. So they, excuse me, they know to come check on you and do a wellness check and get you the help that you're looking for. The ones that are in the bathroom are for the same purpose. If you just feel like you need some help, but take it even a step further and you fell in the shower. The cords are long enough that they hang down to the floor level, so that if you needed help, you would be able to pull that and get some help. We also have every resident is programmed with a pendant. The idea of the pendant is for them to be worn, and you can hide it wherever you want. But if you're in need of assistance, it's the same message or signal that's being sent to the pager to say that you're in need of assistance. With the pendant, if you're out of your apartment and let's say you're in one of the parking garages and you're having a need for assistance, you press it and it's going to tell us your name and the location where you're at in the building, which is much better than what we used to have, because we really didn't have a system unless you paid for it, and it was only good for inside your apartment. One of the things with this system, it takes lithium batteries, and with the lithium batteries, they last, we were told, 2 years or longer. And as many of you already know, we're going around replacing all the batteries at this point, because we're seeing a signal come through the maintenance report that we get every day, telling us whose device needs to be checked or whose device needs to have a battery replaced. If we were to lose power, these are still going to work, because they're not connected to any line voltage or electricity that we have in the building, because it's ran off the lithium battery. In your apartment, many of you know that above your bathroom door there is a motion sensor there. And this is sensing movement throughout the entire day. And I'll preface it right there that it senses movement. It's not a camera. We don't see anything. We only know that there's been movement. So 7 days a week, 365 days a year, we track from 5 a.m. in the morning till 10 a.m. movement. And if you moved in your apartment and it saw you between those times, you're good. If for whatever reason you didn't have any movement from 5 a.m. to 10 a.m., at 10:07 every day, Justin and I, the maintenance guys, the front desk, security, we all get what we call the 10:07 report. And this report is going to list all the residents who have not been seen moving within their apartment. So the first thing that we do at that point is who's ever working the front desk is going to call your apartment to see if you're okay. We know many times it's somebody's still in bed, or they weren't up, or they slept in the guest bedroom and hadn't gone into the master bath where the motion sensor is. If we call up to your apartment and you're not answering, the next step we're going to do is the front desk is going to call whoever is security and say, we need to go to apartment XYZ to do a wellness check. At that point, the security guard will come to your door. They'll ring the doorbell. If nobody answers, they're instructed to enter the apartment or the townhome to do a wellness check and make sure that everyone is okay. Many times what we see in the report, if we have residents who have left, but they did inform the front desk that they were leaving, obviously you're going to show up on the report. And so we end up doing a wellness check. And it kind of goes back to, if you're going to be out of the community for a day or more, it is a good idea to let the front desk know when you're leaving and when you plan to return. That way we're not coming to your apartment when you're not even there. And it helps us know who it is we need to watch, or who do we need to check on, or understand why the resident is showing up on the report. It is a great tool. We've had residents who have bumped because not only can you pull the cord, you can press the blue button that says emergency. We've had residents who have accidentally bumped into them, more so in the bathrooms. And if that happens, you're going to hear it beep. And then all you got to do at the very top, it says acknowledge. If you press that, then it's going to cancel the alarm. Just a little bit of information.
Oh, that's all excellent information, Bob, and I really, really appreciate that. One thing that you talked about was the batteries. Now, recently, you might be hearing some beeping in your apartment. How can you tell maybe it's the smoke alarm needs a new battery, or it's time for that battery in the pull cords?
And that is an excellent question, because that has been happening recently because of the batteries not lasting as long as we thought they were going to last. So when this is chirping, one, it's going to have a little bit different sound of a chirp, but I also understand if you're wearing hearing aids or some other devices, it's hard to tell the two. If this one is beeping, any of the stations, any of the pull stations, there's going to be a light here that's going to be flashing. And as you get closer to this device, you're going to pinpoint that it's the pull station that is chirping. The smoke detectors typically are a little higher pitch and louder beep. And if you walk through your apartment, I think you're going to hear pretty easily that it's coming from this smoke detector.
That's great. That's all really great information. And so another last final thing that I wanted to ask about. Obviously, we've been lucky that we haven't had a lot of snow and snowstorms or ice storms. But if we do get one, and obviously Iowa is in the Midwest, so we have that opportunity, what happens if the power goes out? What if we do have a ice storm, a blizzard, in which the power does go out? Obviously, you said that the pull cords will still work, which hopefully has a sense of security. It makes everyone feel a little bit more comfortable. But what about the rest of the building?
And that's a great question. We saw it this summer when the storm came through derecho. It knocked out power for a couple days for us. It's the same in the summer or the winter. We do have a backup generator. It's 700 kilowatt, which I know probably doesn't mean anything to anybody but Milo because he was an electrician. But that generator, as soon as we lose power, within 10 seconds, we have what's called a transfer switch. It transfers all the power from line voltage to the generator. So in that 10 seconds, the generator instantly starts up and it gets up to full running RPMs. The switchgear sees that the generator is running at full power, then it makes that switch. And that's when you see the flicker of the lights. And if we're going generator, you're going to see a lot of lights not coming on. Because with it being a 700 kW, we're carrying all of the life safety requirements, but it's not going to carry your heat pumps or HVAC equipments, except in the higher levels of care. It carries some of that, but it still won't carry it to the point we're going to be able to heat the building or cool the building. And as we saw with derecho, by the time they got power restored, the building was starting to warm up a little bit. And so when that happens, we need to make sure that in the wintertime, we're keeping blinds closed, making sure windows are latched, because over a period of time, we're going to see the building getting cold or warm, depending on which season we're in. The generator has a 700-gallon diesel fuel capacity, and running full load, we figure on 700 gallons, we're good for almost 5 days. To be exact, it's 4.83 days that we can run the building off of 700 gallons, but we'll never let it get that low. So as long as we still have our agreement with the fuel company, when we get down to probably about that 200 to 300 gallon mark, we'll be making the call to say we need our tanks filled back up. So as long as diesel fuel is available, we'll still be able to run the generator. But now when we talk about not cooling, not heating, as you can tell, it kind of puts us in a tough spot. Not only us, but anyone else who's running on generators. Let's take, we have a power outage, and in the wintertime or the summer, we're going to have some lighting here. We're going to have some of our abilities still in play because we're running a generator. But you think of the 32 townhomes, those residents don't have backup generators, or they're not hooked to our generator, which would not even be possible, or if it would be, it'd be outrageously expensive. Talking with James, we would have the opportunity to start bringing townhome residents over to the main building. As we're in one of the guest rooms, we always have some empty apartments. We have beds that would be available in assisted living, rooms, you know, at least get those people over here. And then long term, since I've been here, and more so over the last 3 years, we've been doing what we call disaster preparedness. And that's where the health center administrator, the director of nursing, myself, James, HR, and some other key team members, we would walk through exercises of what we would do. And as we know, when it comes to a disaster, we can plan for one type of disaster, but then what happens when the disaster happens that no one even thought of? Think of 9/11. No one dreamed that that's the disaster that we were going to deal with. We do have some agreements with hotels. They're not a guarantee to get people moved in. And again, if we have a large disaster of whatever size and it's localized to the Des Moines area, those hotels are going to be affected as much as we are. And then also with just people in the community, let's assume they can still take people and put them in rooms, and they have their backup generators to have power and heating and cooling. They're going to fill it very quickly. I know we have some agreements with some other retirement communities that are close to us, that if we had to start transferring residents, the first priority is going to be the higher levels of care in the health center. And we've actually done some tabletops with the Urbandale Fire Department, the Urbandale Fire Marshal, and the Urbandale Police Department. And, excuse me, if we get to that point where we're transferring, let's say, health center residents, they're going to be here with either buses and ambulances, and our first priority is to get the residents in the higher levels of care secured and get them safe. Then it would become what we call incident command, and that's where we would set up basically a triage team to hand out job duties. One's going to be like logistics, safety, the public point, PIOA, point of information for the media, and then transportation, and then we'd start working on our next steps depending on what the disaster is to get the rest of the residents out of here. With it being independent living, many of you have family members that live in the Des Moines area, and it may be, let's say Deerfield was hit by a tornado. Your best bet is going to be able to go to a friend or family outside of Deerfield to seek that shelter. But again, it depends on the disaster and how widespread it is. It becomes very complicated. It is organized chaos from our side, and it's something that we talk about and we plan for.
That's awesome. So you talk about this generator. Could we see it?
Yeah, let's go down and see it.
All right, let's check it out.
So now we're outside. We're at the generator. This is the unit that's on the west side down by the delivery area. This is the unit I was talking about in the event of power loss. Starts up and transfers within 10 seconds. Just a couple things that we do with this on a weekly basis. Every Tuesday morning, year-round, we do a generator test, and that's where we start up the generator, do a transfer, let it run. We log the hours. We have to submit all the testing, how long it ran, the fuel, how much of the load was transferred. And then the other thing we do twice a year is we do a fuel analysis, and that's where we take a sample of the fuel and it gets sent in just to make sure we don't have water or some other sort of contaminant, because we always want to be certain that this thing is going to start up and run properly. We're not going to start it up today, but I do have the door open, and Justin's going to get a look inside. It's a small compartment, or I shouldn't say it's a large compartment with a large diesel engine inside. So if you want to take a look, let's peek inside.
So Bob, what kind of maintenance goes into this? I mean, outside of the testing, which I think is fantastic, but is there other additional maintenance that needs to be done to make sure it works well?
Yep, so there's things that we do from a maintenance standpoint, but we also have a contract with a company that comes in, and that's where they're changing filters. You can see the filters in front. We date them, so we know when they were put on. The belts get checked and replaced as needed. It's just like any other engine in a semi, and that's what this is. It's an engine that would be in a semi. If it moves or it's electrical, at some point it's going to fail. But with our generators, it's extremely important that we don't have a failure when we need it. And so that's where having a company come in, they do their own analysis. They can hook up equipment to make sure that the head pressure, all the things that make an engine run are working properly. So this is truly a well-oiled machine, as the cliche says.
That's perfect. Bob, this is a really cool thing for the residents to see, because they probably had no idea what that big yellow box was out there if they ever saw it. Is there any other cool places in Deerfield that maybe the residents hadn't seen before?
Yeah, there's one with the Resident Community Services Committee. I like to talk about the attics, and a lot of the residents, let me rephrase that, none of the residents have ever been up there, so let's go take a quick look.
That sounds cool. Let's go.
Okay, so we're up in one of the attics. We're actually in the health center, but this is a typical attic that we see throughout the entire building. And we have catwalks up here where we can walk through. We can access all the mechanical equipment. The funny thing is, many times when the maintenance guys are up in the attics doing work or performing preventative maintenance, the residents who live below call down the front desk and said, "Hey, it sounds like there's an animal up in the attic." Well, it's one of the maintenance guys. So those of you that live on the 4th floor definitely have heard when our guys or a contractor is walking around, because you guys live directly below it. But these attics have a lot of mechanical equipment in them, and it's still stuff we have to access to do preventative maintenance. Now we're going to go in, and I'm going to show you one of the air handling units. So here, we'll go in, but this is also the air handling unit, one of them for the health center. And again, we're still up in the attic. These are climate controlled rooms. And this is a lot different than the heating and cooling in your apartment. This is for, again, the health center. And they still have heat pumps like you do, but it's a little bit different setup. But then we have these big McQuay units that are also supplying heat and cooling. And this is one of the areas that residents would never ever get a chance to see. There's ladders we got to climb up to get up into the attic. But talking with Justin, we thought this would be a good opportunity to let you guys see the belly of the ship, so to be. There's so much that is in this building that most people don't see, and I was talking to Justin when we were headed up here. You know, it's kind of like the Titanic. You got the belly of the ship where all this stuff makes this building run. Nobody ever sees it. They know when it fails because the heating, the cooling, the electricity, something goes out, and it's of a piece of equipment somewhere in this building that needs attention and needs work done to it. And this is just a good example to give you guys a good look. And
as you can see, we're back now to where it all began for today. Bob, is there anything else you'd like to address?
yeah, absolutely. First, I hope you all find this interesting. There is a lot of moving parts when it comes to a building like this. What we talked about today was truly just scratching the surface. It's just endless list of things that we do on our end every day to help maintain this building. And I also know for today there were a few residents that sent in specific questions for me today with what the agenda was and what we were trying to do. I'm going to answer those in a future town hall. There was a few that I answered just in the segment of talking about Permar, the pull stations, and those types of things. Some of the questions were specific to town home residents, so today was just a day to kind of give an overview of very specific items that we had, and then also give all of you a tour of the building and see some things that you normally don't see.
Yeah. So I thank you for your time. I know you are obviously a very, very busy guy and do a lot of different things to keep this place going, and so we appreciate your time. And again, I hope everyone here watching this video has enjoyed it and has learned a little bit, and obviously they can always contact you with additional questions.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So again, thank you all for tuning in today, and thank you, Bob, for joining us.
Thank you, Justin.
Yep.